What's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is FST. It's Fantasy Sports Today. My name's Matt Striker. His name is Joe Pisapia, and this is the place for those that want to dominate. Whether it be season-long fantasy, straight-up wagering, whatever it is, we've got you covered. And if you're new to the show, this is a very fun bunch. Be a part of it at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. Those are our social media handles. We want to hear from you, and I'm pretty sure you got some things you want to say to us. TD Jake is behind the glass taking us down this trip, trying to land this plane. Sam Y, the sports guy, is also here serving drinks. But Joe Pisapia, the man, like Carew and Vida Blue, we're talking baseball. Come on in, Joey P., the author of the Fantasy Black Book. Folks, you'll hear us talk about that a lot because it has simply changed the way that I believe an entire generation has looked at just watching baseball, watching football, and wagering on them and winning at fantasy. Joe, thank you so much. Happy baseball. How are you?
Yes, that's right. If you listen close, you'll hear that sound. It's the crack of the bat at spring training, and spring always reminds me of the fresh start. It's a new season. It's a new opportunity, and there's something very magical about baseball, right? The beginning of the year. Now, there's still, half a dozen teams or more that know that they have zero chance of being competitive, but there's a lot of teams right now looking out there saying, hey, we've got a shot out here, and everybody's trying to slay the dragon. You have that one bad guy of the Dodgers. That's who it is, especially in the National League. So it's going to be a really fun season. We've got a lot to talk about today, and I do enjoy Matt Striker's new look that he's been showing off lately. I don't know if people have realized this, but we got to go back to Matt because he's doing the whole newspaper editor thing with the glasses on the head, which I really like, which I feel like he stole from Craig Mish once or twice. But I feel like I'm going into the editor's room and I've got to, I'm pitching a story. Hey, I got this story about these hamate bones and everybody's got a hamate bone broken. What do you say? Can I run with it? Can I, boss? Go ahead. Now cut to Matt Striker and show me what he looks like there. Oh, and he said, come on, boss. Can I do it?
I don't know, Joey. I got to see your sources out there. Streets are saying that some of your work is loose. I can't be running a story out there. I'll have every ball player at my door. Something to that effect.
Good.
But all jokes aside, you mentioned these hamate bones. So let's get right into it. A lot of people are starting to think about their draft, think about their wagers. I know a lot of people are recovering from, hopefully you did well enough in football season, but as a wagerer, we look at baseball a bit differently. Let's talk about some of these injuries, these hamate bones. And I was talking with one of our producers, Sam Y, the sports guy, before we came on the air. As I understand this, Joe, the hamate bone is that kind of like round bone right here where the hand meets the wrist. And it's all about these guys trying to check that swing, trying to slow down that approach. Everyone is swinging so hard. We've heard of the oblique injuries, now the hamate. Yeah. I think that is something that is going to grip baseball, but it was Sam that made a great point. If the guys that are currently hamated, Lindor, Holiday, Corbin Carroll, if they go on to still have productive seasons, this will be a non-issue next year. Joe?
Yeah, well, I feel a little like Bill Hader in SNL when he used to play that character Stefan, where he's like, oblique injuries are so last year. This year, everyone isn't the hamate bones. Yeah, he covers his mouth and does the whole thing. And it was weird because it just kept happening like every hour on the hour where it was somebody else getting hurt with a hamate bone. And it was different ways too. Somebody got hit on the hand. Some people just had the fracture there that felt like it was just, kind of, I guess, a stress fracture. And they all have different timetables, it seems, of return. So let's talk about who it is. It's Francisco Lindor of the New York Mets. It's Jackson Holiday of the Baltimore Orioles. And then also Corbin Carroll of the Arizona Diamondbacks, who not only is going to possibly miss the opening of the season, but he's going to miss the WBC, which he was going to be a part of too. Yep. So he had to get replaced. So it looks like Roman Anthony's going to take his spot in the WBC, which I know some people don't like. I enjoy the WBC. I don't know where you stand on that, Matt. But more importantly, now all the draft stock of these guys, and we've talked about it on my shows on Fantasy Pros MLB, on the YouTube all week about the adjustments. I think some people are over-adjusting a little bit. I think with Corbin Carroll, it does knock him out of the first round for me. He is a player that I think is very important. He is, in terms of where his power comes from with the hands. You've seen sometimes these guys will recover in somewhere around, 6 weeks to 8 weeks. It depends on the player. But sometimes the power does drag behind. You have an example last year, Francisco Alvarez of the Mets, right? He came back from the surgery. He was healthy, and the power was not there. He got sent down. Then things started to get better for him about a month after that. So even if, let's say, Francisco Lindor is their opening day playing shortstop, I don't know if you're going to see the power until mid-May really flash. Now, you could say he's a slow starter anyway. Okay, Jackson Holiday, another guy, too, where they seem like they're just really taking it slow with him. They have a lot of bodies, so there's less pressure. I think the Mets and Lindor have the most pressure. I think Lindor is the guy you're going to see back the quickest. But in terms of effect, I think Corbin Carroll is the guy that I'm most concerned with because of the style of his swing. So, Matt, I'm not sure where you at with three guys, too, how much you've dropped them in your rankings or in your thoughts. It is a long season, though. I mean, we do have 6 months of baseball. So if things don't go well for the first month and a half, there's still a lot of baseball left for a guy like Lindor, Holiday, or, of course, Corbin Carroll. What are your thoughts on all these guys you've had to readjust your thinking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. The first thing I do is I look at their position and I see how deep is that position, and then I decide how important is this player to me. Overall, a guy like Corbin Carroll, who was people are going to spend a lot of draft capital on, you would assume you have to look at that team in its entirety and ask, how does Corbin Carroll compete within a vacuum? Like, that's another thing too that people have to understand about baseball, especially now. Lineups are constructed in a very different way from when Joe, you and I were kids, right? You don't see it the same way. So the valuing of the player there is something that you have to take into consideration, as is what a particular player's situation will become trade deadline. And that brings me to my next point here, is that Framber Valdez has signed with the Tigers. What does this mean that the Tigers do with Tariq Skubal? Because every report I've heard is that Boris and company want to go to market. They want Skubal to command at least $600 million. It sounds insane. Ahead of a work stoppage, I think it's coming. So now you're the Tigers. You'll clearly be in the race. You have Valdez and Skubal at the top, but you have to do something with Tariq Skubal by the trade deadline. Joe, what happens in Detroit?
Well, if you're in first place at the trade deadline, I feels like they're just going for it here. It feels like maybe they also think that with that looming strike, that perhaps with a salary cap that gets implemented afterwards, eventually, that maybe the logic changes a little bit on how much free agents are actually going to pull in. So to me, this was a very savvy move by the Tigers here, because the market for Framber Valdez was very sketchy because of some of the issues last year. We had that one major thing where he threw at the catcher, basically crossed him off.
You buy into that narrative? You think that impeded Valdez signing?
I do, and I think it's wrong. I really do. I think it's a very wrong way to look at it. To me, Framber Valdez is an elite starting pitcher. He takes the ball every fifth day. He's a guy you can depend on. He's a winner. He has postseason experience. He's exactly what the Tigers needed, which was a 2 basically to the 1 or a 1A to Skubal. I get what you're saying, too. I mean, if you miss out on cashing in on Skubal, you could all of a sudden get a bunch of major league ready prospects back into the Tiger system very quickly and stay good. But if you have Skubal, you have Framber Valdez, to me, it's a symbol that you're going for it. Also, a symbol that, you don't like somebody anymore is releasing them. And that's what the Phillies did. They said, Nick Castellanos, stay home. And then he was released and then picked up immediately by the Padres. So we'll see how he works into that lineup. And then big news here from the Atlanta Braves. Also, Spencer Schwellenbach goes to the 60-day IL in the Fantasy Baseball Black Book this year. He was a red flag pitcher, a guy that I had real concerns with. I thought he is basically headed to Tommy John, and nobody wants to admit it. It's probably not going to end well. And we didn't barely get, 2 days into spring training before this happened. And I thought that the Braves would pivot, Matt. I thought they would go to a guy like Zach Gallen to fill that void potentially. But instead, Zach Gallen goes back for 1 year with the Arizona Diamondbacks. Again, with Corbin Carroll missing half the year, I think this was a crucial signing for the Diamondbacks. I was surprised he didn't have more of a market. Were you?
Well, I think the whole thing that a lot of people were starting to kick the tires, and I think that Arizona desperately needs something, especially with the Carroll news. And we can dive into who won and who lost in the offseason when we come back from the break.
That's right. There's winners and losers, and don't get caught on the wrong side of that line. We're going to take you through all of the winners of the offseason and some teams that maybe didn't have the best offseason in our opinion, but in fantasy, some of these big changes really matter. We'll be right back to break them all down for you on FST.
It looked like a clump of grass. It didn't look like an eagle. That's the one, by the way, that USA Today claimed was the best ad. They thought the Lay's ad was number 2. The worst ad was any ad that had AI in it or had an AI company behind it. It wasn't because of the AI. It was because they were the most nonsensical ads you've ever seen. Does anybody look at these ads and understand if they are actually trying to do what they're trying to do, which is to showcase the product as opposed to being great with AI? Very embarrassing.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Road trips to Kentucky and Tennessee, which are pressure environments where mistakes can snowball a team quickly. And not even listen out of those games there. How about the home games they have left with Alabama and Florida, who bring size, who bring pace, and physicality that punish you on both ends of the floor.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The Patriots postseason to the worst regular season of the last umpteen years. Fair enough?
Fair.
All right. So the Patriots postseason, they averaged 1.13 points per drive, okay? The winless Cleveland Browns about 10 years ago averaged 1.22.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need. And it's funny, Joe and I have worked together now for, what was this, 6 or 7 years, something to this effect. And I learned something new about Joe in every break. And I've always known Joe to be a creative guy, right? He's an author, he's a host, he's a writer, all these things. But you're an idea guy too. And you come up with some really good ideas. And I think in life, one good idea, I think Mark Cuban said this, one good idea out of all your ideas in your life will make you a winner. So folks, if you have an idea out there, pursue it, because otherwise it means nothing. Now, that's my segue into the off-season winners and losers, Joe. And I think it's clear. For those that don't know, Joe is a Met fan, right? Born and raised in Brooklyn, now residing in Jersey. We won't hold that against you. But every year it's like hope springs eternal for your Metropolitans every year. Why is this year any different?
Well, I have to have the Mets at the top here because Matt is so excited about turning the page to baseball. It's his first love. He loves baseball. So I immediately got to hit him with the Met stuff right at the top there, just to kind of bring him down a notch a little bit. But yeah, look, some people in the Mets fandom had a lot of problems with how the Mets offseason at least began. And I understand that. You lose Edwin Diaz, one of the best closers in baseball, and it seemed like kind of a weird miscommunication, or he felt annoyed that they signed another reliever and didn't tell him about it, which honestly, I don't think anybody at the network has to tell us when they hire a new host. You know, typically it's like, hey, here's this other host you're working with, or this is going to do a show after, and you go, okay. And you just go about your business, especially if you're a free agent. Like, you might not be on that team. Like, why do they have to tell you? I get it. It's a little bit of respect thing, and he felt disrespected. Then you have Pete Alonso, fan favorite, Brandon Nimmo, Jeff McNeil, guys who have been there for a long time. But here's the dirty little truth. That group, although beloved by the fans, how many World Series wins do they have? 0. Right. So, it's time for a refresh. And I think Stearns took a lot of heat, and I think you're finally seeing the first Stearns team. You got to realize when Stearns came in, he had a lot of big contracts. You had the Verlanders and the Scherzers and veteran guys. And then, all of a sudden they got really hot a couple years ago and made a great playoff run. I think they had to kind of go back to it. They added Soto, right? And that was the big move. This is, I think, the first year you've seen what they want to do and how they want to do it under Stearns. And I think when you step back and look at the finished product, it's really interesting. And what's most interesting about it is something a lot of fans will complain about, which is too many long-term contracts where guys just get comfortable. Not with the Mets. Bo Bichette, first of all, a throwback guy who hits 300. How many guys you see that anymore? He's got power, but he makes contact all the time. He's really good with runners in scoring position too. Sure, he's moving to third base, but again, who cares? Because he's a shortstop. Shortstops moving to third base is fine historically. Ask Cal Ripken, ask A-Rod, ask all those guys. They had Freddie Peralta, who was the ace that they did not have. How many years does he have left on his contract? Oh, wait, one. Bo Bichette, a guy can opt out after one. You also have Luis Robert. Another guy's got another year on his contract, right? So if this doesn't work, you just blow it up and continue to move on and let the kids continue to play like Carson Benj and Ewing and all the other guys that still have left in the system. Marcus Semien, they like that trade because they get better defensively. They get leadership there with Semien and less years committed to a contract that isn't great where they had Brandon Nimmo. Jorge Polanco, a guy coming off a really solid year, versatile player. Devin Williams, Luke Weaver, two pieces in the bullpen. So to me, the Mets offseason is really good. And I think what you love most about it from a fantasy perspective is all these guys are on show-me contracts. And I think show-me contracts are the best kind of contracts to invest in. I've done this work and the homework about it in the Black Book in the past. And most of the time, those guys show up, ball out because they want to get paid. So I would expect all these guys to be out there ready to go, ready to show the best versions of themselves. And Robert's the most interesting possibly because Robert is a guy a couple of years ago looked like a star. If you get something even 80% of that, Matt, that's very different. What did you make of some of these moves the Mets made in this offseason?
Yeah, I'm glad that you highlighted Luis Robert because out of this list, from a fantasy perspective, and I've been doing a few mock drafts and rankings just in whatever small spare time I have, Luis Robert keeps coming up. I'm just excited. I find in baseball a lot of times guys get hyped, but then they go away. But guys that have pedigree and they can kind of look at the underlying numbers and you can see a guy like Luis Robert. Bo Bichette, everyone knows, but I think Luis Robert will be sitting there for me in certain drafts, and I think he'll be a great addition to my team, to my bench from a fantasy perspective. And if he gets hot, he's fun for a total base kind of thing or a home run, any of these props where these guys can cash in quickly. Keeping with this winners list, the south side of Chicago erupts when I say the Chicago Cubs are on your winners list. Picked up Edward Cabrera, picked up Alex Bregman, going to have Justin Steele kind of coming back into the fold. Cade Horton also. A lot of people also wanted to know if guys like Nico Horner when Matt Shaw were going to be traded. Neither were. I think Horner's another throwback player, like you said, put bat to ball, and that's something we don't see a lot. So the Cubs rank as a winner. Are they a foregone conclusion in the Central? Because I still think the Brewers have something to offer, and just everyone should know I'm a Cardinal fan as well. But the Cubbies are on your winners list, Joe, huh?
They are, and I think the Reds should be taken seriously as well. I think there's a lot of talent on that team. But I think it's a win for the Cubs because not only, as you touched on, you get Justin Steele back, you hope for a better year from Imanaga, who's returning, and now all of a sudden you have Edward Cabrera along with Horton. So all of a sudden with Boyd, this is a real legitimate 5-deep rotation, which you don't see a lot of in the major leagues. There's a lot of teams that are quote-unquote contenders. You look at the back of that rotation, you go, I don't know how this looks. Not the Cubs. I think the Cabrera one is really interesting because you saw him break out last year. Lance Brozdowski, I had on my show, and he did a whole breakdown in the beginning of, I want to say it was March, with us about Edward Cabrera and why he thought he could take off this year. And to his credit, he was 100% right. He's one of the best in the business in terms of evaluating pitchers. And then you add Alex Bregman, a guy who's been there, done that, won everywhere he goes. His teams go to the playoffs. And it hurt the Red Sox, I think, quite a bit, and I think Red Sox fans are looking around going, what have we done here? We traded Devers. We thought Bregman was going to be that guy, and unfortunately it wasn't. But I think the Cubs did themselves really good service bringing in a guy like Bregman, very solid. I think the Blue Jays had an underrated offseason as well. Dylan Cease, I understand a down year, but all the deeper numbers, the expected ERA, the FIP, the xFIP, all point to the fact that the ERA should have been lower. Akamoto, a guy that I think has some opportunity here to really prove himself. You had Cody Ponce, who was the MVP of the KBO League, and he was spectacular. And then you had Tyler Rogers, a nice addition to the bullpen. And then I guess you could say the Dodgers had a pretty good offseason, I guess. I mean, they did sign one of the best closers in baseball, and Edwin Diaz and Kyle Tucker, who's pretty good. With Kyle Tucker, it's about being healthy. But Matt, Kyle Tucker in the front top of that lineup there, Shohei Ohtani, Kyle Tucker, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman. No, let the break take me away. I don't want to keep going. Oh, the Dodgers, too good.
It looked like a clump of grass. It didn't look like an eagle. That's the one, by the way, that USA Today claimed was the best ad. They thought the Lay's ad was number 2. The worst ad was any ad that had AI in it or had an AI company behind it. It wasn't because of the AI. It was because they were the most nonsensical ads you've ever seen. Does anybody look at these ads and understand if they are actually trying to do what they're trying to do, which is to showcase the product as opposed to being great with AI? Very embarrassing.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Road trips to Kentucky and Tennessee, which are pressure environments where mistakes can snowball a team quickly. And not even listening at those games there, how about the home games they have left with Alabama and Florida, who bring size, who bring pace, and physicality that punish you on both ends of the floor.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The Patriots postseason to the worst regular season of the last umpteen years. Fair enough?
Fair.
All right. So the Patriots postseason, they averaged 1.13 points per drive, okay? The winless Cleveland Browns about 10 years ago averaged 1.22.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports today. Matt and Joe with you here talking baseball. I want to hear from you at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. Hit us up. Let us know your thoughts. Joe, we did the offseason winners, and there were some good ones. So now let's talk about some offseason losers. And I don't know if the fan base, and I'd love to hear from the fan base on social media, would deem their team as losers. So we'll start with the Milwaukee Brewers. I understand losing Freddie Peralta hurts, but have we forgotten that Jacob Mizorowski is still there? Have we forgotten that Brandon Woodruff is coming back? This is still a team that has a trio in the outfield, like Terang, Frelick. There's a lot to be excited about here for the Milwaukee Brewers. So why are they on the loser list?
I don't know how much there is to be excited. I gotta be honest. Like when
I
you don't
pitched voice there to come in.
I don't know. Look, think of it this way. So a couple years ago, you get rid of Corbin Burns, then you get rid of Freddie Peralta. I think that's a lot. I think at some point you have to make a decision between those two guys. Like we got to keep one of them. And I thought getting rid of Burns was probably the right call. Getting rid of Peralta, I'm not sure about. And I like the package I got back. Brent Sprott is a nice young arm, inconsistent. Jet Williams is a fun prospect, but he's a small guy. Like, does he profile more like a utility guy than he does necessarily? Like, is he more Tommy Edman or is he Jose Altuve? You know, like I don't know yet. I don't know what the answer to that question is necessarily, and none of us do. We'll find that out. But I think when you look at this lineup right now, you're asking a lot, I think, out of it. You have Churio at the top, who's great, but Bryce Terang, is he really going to, I know we're going to dig a little deeper into second base later in the show, but is he going to repeat an 18 home run season? I'm questionable about that. Christian Yelich, another year older, who's had injury issues later in his career. They just signed Luis Rengifo, which is an intriguing signing to me, but also one that makes me concerned. And I still think you have Brandon Woodruff at the top of this rotation, who is far from a sure thing in terms of health. Jacob Mizorowski, I think, is a guy you can pretty much, have that box next to him where you check it eventually for Tommy John surgery. Like, it's coming. Winter's coming at some point for Jacob Mizorowski. I think Quinn Priester, Patrick Henderson. I know they got Kyle Harrison, the guy that he's bounced around a little bit, but I like. But I don't know. I just feel like all of a sudden with the Cubs doing what they did this offseason, the Reds, I think being so young and hungry, I think the Milwaukee Brewers, and Pat Murphy's amazing, I think it's a little tenuous there. So that's how I feel about the Brewers. Who else do you think is a loser here when you look at this list that we've compiled here. And I know it's negative, so we tried to keep it short.
Well, no, listen, I get it, but the conversations need to be had because from a draft and wagering perspective, if everyone's going to deem these teams losers or these players off the board, that means they're going to be free picking for us, and we're going to try to find value there. Let's go to the embattled city of Minneapolis, St. Paul. The Minnesota Twins are on the loser list here. I think the biggest thing with the Twins is there's a lot of potential, but it's just how many guys can they put on the field all at the same time that are healthy? Joe?
Yeah, I just the Twins, I just don't think they did anything this offseason. And I think that's another one too, where you look around. And the Philadelphia Phillies are a team that you look at and basically they swapped out Garcia for Castellanos for Garcia, I should say, pardon me. And they have Zach Wheeler with thoracic outlet syndrome, which scares the heck out of me. They lost Ranger Suarez, very, solid piece there. I know the bullpen has improved over the years. I don't know. I mean, Schwarber returns, but again, I feel like we're just running it back here. And I don't know if that's the best thing to do. Like, the team's a little bit older, and I think you could say the same about the Yankees. Here's the thing. There's that adage, right, Matt, of if you're not growing, you're dying. I feel like the Yankees and the Phillies running it back, hoping for the best with the top of the rotation to repeat. But if you're not growing and adding, are you dying in Major League Baseball?
Joe, that sign sat above Vince McMahon's desk in his office at WWE Tower. If you're not growing, you're dying. It's something I heard quite a bit during my time as a WWE performer. To the point with regards to the Phillies, I think that the Braves are going to be exponentially better. I think the Mets are going to be better. So I think the Phillies are going to have a tough road. The Yankees have a better, I think, youth. Yankees have a better garden than Philadelphia does. We're looking at some guys in camp like Carlos LaGrange and looking at some guys like Elmer Rodriguez and Lombard and things like that. So I think the Yankees have more to be excited about from a perspective of not having to go out and spend. I think the Phillies need to do it now this year. Otherwise, there's a lot of things standing in their way, Joe, as I go black.
Yeah, we fade to black here with some of the losing teams. I don't know. I guess I expected more from the Yankees. It was so dramatic about the Cody Bellinger saga. It seems like their whole offseason was just Cody Bellinger and that discussion. And to me, with a looming strike, as you talked about, work stoppage, lockout, whatever it might end up becoming, this is another prime year of Aaron Judge, and I don't want to waste it if I'm the New York Yankees. Sure, you can always make moves during the middle of the season, but I don't know. I just thought the Yankees were kind of looking around, maybe didn't see anything they liked, and maybe just didn't want to compete on that kind of scale anymore. I don't know. It's a very weird offseason for those Yankees. We'll see how it works out for them. We come back, we're going to start breaking down the positions. First things first. We'll be right back after this.
It looked like a clump of grass. It didn't look like an eagle. That's the one, by the way, that USA Today claimed was the best ad. They thought the Lay's ad was number 2. The worst ad was any ad that had AI in it or had an AI company behind it. It wasn't because of the AI. It was because they were the most nonsensical ads you've ever seen. Does anybody look at these ads and understand if they are actually trying to do what they're trying to do, which is to showcase the product as opposed to being great with AI? Very embarrassing.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
Road trips to Kentucky and Tennessee, which are pressure environments where mistakes can snowball a team quickly. And not even listening to those games there, how about the home games they have left with Alabama and Florida, who bring size, who bring pace, and physicality that punish you on both ends of the floor.
College basketball today, only on SportsGrid.
The Patriots postseason to the worst regular season of the last umpteen years. Fair enough?
Fair.
All right. So the Patriots postseason, they averaged 1.13 points per drive, okay? The winless Cleveland Browns about 10 years ago averaged 1.22.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
Welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here along with a great crew. Folks, if you love what you do, you'll never work a day in your life, and that's my hope for everyone. It's time for Joe and myself and all of you at SportsGrid TV. Keep the conversation going. To break down the first base position, let's go first base rankings here. And Joe, normally drafting a first baseman, you're expecting a certain type of productivity. And if you want to make a pivot, an argument can be made, but that's for another time and another show. Normally, you're expecting a certain kind of productivity. So at the top of this list, Nick Kurtz ranks as the number one first baseman, ADP of 20. I disagree with this because I think the guy after should be number one, and that's Vlad Guerrero Jr., ranked as 2, an ADP of 22. So it's kind of just a preference. Do you prefer having a bit more miles on the card because you know what you're going to get, you like the lineup, or do you prefer having the new shiny toy that has a great track to drive around, if you will? Let's start there. Is Kurtz there so much more so because of the park factor, or are there other things that I might be missing, Joe?
I think the park factor is a big part of it, and I think it should be. And you look at this little league ballpark in Sacramento that they're playing in, it's really fun. It's a good time there if you like the athletics offensively, and I do. And Nick Kurtz was a darling of this program going into last year, and then in April, I don't know how many times we screamed from the rooftops, "Hey, add Nick Kurtz. It's gonna be good. Just trust us." And sometimes you add these rookies and they don't always pan out, but Kurtz certainly one that did. He had a fantastic year in 2025. You look back at the stats of Nick Kurtz, and it was brilliant for him. He had 36 homers in just 117 games. He hit 291. He drove in 86 runs. He scored 90 runs. So he's the real deal. I do believe in Nick Kurtz. I'm good with him being the first guy off the board because historically speaking, Vlad Guerrero Jr., as great as he was last year, he's had a little up and down in his career. If you want to take Vlad first, because it makes you feel warm and fuzzy because you've seen more of him and you have a longer track record, I don't think there's an argument against that. I think it's a perfectly good logic, but I understand people looking at the upside of Kurtz because I think if you're trying to bet on one of these guys hit 40 home runs, it's more likely you're going to get that from Kurtz, even if the batting average backtracks a little bit. And if you're somebody that said, no, I'd rather just have my 30 with the high batting average, then maybe Vlad is your guy. So I think that battle at 1 and 2 is really interesting. And then you have Pete Alonso right behind that, Bryce Harper coming in after that as the fourth guy, the 36 overall, Rafael Devers, who eventually, did put together a pretty good season with the San Francisco Giants at 5, and then Matt Olson at 6. To me, this is where that tier drop happens. Now, you might disagree, but I want to get your thoughts on that because Freddie Freeman, to me, is a player that started to show his age a little bit and show the wear and tear. He's played a lot of games, a lot of postseason games. I love Freddie Freeman. We all love Freddie Freeman. If you love baseball, you love that guy. But to me, he is a notch below all these other guys because of the power. And I think Freddie Freeman at this stage is not a guy you're looking at to hit 35 home runs anymore. But all the other guys above him, I think, all have that potential to get to that 35, maybe even push 40 mark. What do you think about that tier drop-off? Do you put Freddie Freeman because of his elite bat-to-ball skills still up there with that group, or is he a notch below these top 5 or 6?
No, there's a difference between logic and emotion, especially when you're talking about money or wagering or trying to win a fantasy league. I'm arguably one of the biggest Freddie Freeman fans out there. I'm a throwback guy. I don't think we'll see a player like Freddie Freeman again, sadly. But with that said, I agree wholeheartedly with what Joe is saying here, because when you look at that top list of Kurtz, Vlad, Pete Alonso, Bryce Harper, Rafi Devers, and Matt Olson is my target. I'm expecting a lot of bounce backs from Braves, but I circle Matt Olson right there as being, there's some recency bias there. So I think he would be ranked maybe a little bit better, but there's a chasm from Olson to Freeman. Then I'll go down the list if it's okay. Freeman is next, then it's Josh Naylor, then it's Ben Rice, and it's Vinny Pasquantino. I'd like to stop there because I think Ben Rice is an exciting player. And if for some reason you miss out on one of those eight first basemen, and Ben Rice is sitting there, who also will still have catcher eligibility. I know you're reading reports he slept wrong and hasn't started swinging a bat. I'm not worried. I think Ben Rice in a breakout season can really help the Yankees. So right there is where I want to draw another line and get your thoughts, Joe. From the Matt Olson down to maybe the Vinny Pasquantino, is there someone other than Ben Rice that you would choose?
Yeah, I like Josh Naylor still, and it's a good lineup around him. And unlike some other guys, when he went to Seattle, he really didn't necessarily drop off all that much. You go look in September, he hit 364 there. He had 4 home runs in August, 4 home runs in September. He's a very consistent guy. So I like him. I like Pasquantino also, especially with the adjustments they made to that ballpark. I think a lot of us don't realize, or a lot of people don't realize, if Vinny Pasquantino hit 30 home runs last year. It was very quiet because that team was very quiet. He drove in 113 runs. He had 260 again. Like, that's his normal range. That's what he gives you. So Ben Rice is a nice player. Ben Rice might also have to catch a little bit too, depending on how they use him in this lineup. I like Ben Rice. Look, I live very close to Somerset, New Jersey, right where I go, and I've seen the Yankees AA team a bunch. Ben Rice was the guy that I remember reporting to you, and you said, well, how was the game last night? And I said, I like Ben Rice. Ben Rice, like Spencer Jones, he was like Richie Sexy. He's going to strike out a million times, whatever it is. But Ben Rice, that's the player I like. George Lombard, George Lombard is a really good athlete. I don't think he's a baseball player yet. I really just don't see that. But Ben Rice, and look, Ben Rice had a good year. But Pasquantino and Naylor, I have a little bit more faith in, a little bit deeper into their careers. So for me, those are my guys towards the end. But I think it tells you, if you're in a fantasy league that's a little more shallow or a 10-team league, first base is pretty deep and you can find some power there.
And it's funny because the reason I lean Vlad over Nick Kurtz is the same reason it seems you're leaning the Pasquantinos and Nailers over Rice. It's very interesting. Rounding out the top dozen, Tyler Soderstrom, another player I would gladly take. I like that team. I like that lineup. And I guess with regards to what you're saying with Kurtz playing in that ballpark, Soderstrom plays in the same ballpark as well. And then Sal Perez has eligibility, but I'd pass because the same reason I'd pass on Freddie Freeman. Moving on to the next tier here, we have Michael Busch, Yandy Diaz, Christian Walker. I expect a bounce back year from him, and Alec Burleson from the St. Louis Cardinals. There's going to have to be someone that's going to have to do something on that team, and I think Burleson might be that guy. Let me stop there, Joe. Michael Busch, Yandy Diaz, a great ball player, Christian Walker, Alec Burleson. If you were forced to pick one, and we can talk about where their ADPs lie, whom would it be?
Mm-hmm. Look, there's a big drop off. It's Michael Busch, and then all of a sudden you drop into the 140, 170, 80 range with the other guys. I would take Michael Busch there. To me, there is a line that I would draw in the sand because this is another one, too. A player who's entering his prime years. He's 28, turning 29. These are the prime years of Michael Busch. And you look at what he did last year, 34 homers, drove in 90 runs, hit 262. He's really solid in a team that just added Alex Bregman to it. I think if you are in a spot in a draft where first base gets away from you somehow, like you're at the turns and you just miss out on a couple runs, Michael Busch is a guy you can end up in a pretty good spot. But if you're doing well at first base, you need a corner guy. I think Michael Busch is also one that you could really look for and like what you get out of him. Torkelson coming in at 17, then Wilson Contreras now with the Boston Red Sox. We'll see how that transition goes. Okamoto, Murakami, two of the imports from Japan back-to-back. Matt, do you have any desire for either of these guys in the landing spots of Toronto or Chicago with the White Sox here? I know Murakami was a player too, some power, but some questions about some other ability to make consistent contact.
Well, it's funny you should ask because Okamoto and Murakami respectively kind of round out the bottom. After Murakami, we get into the ADP of 200 and further. And in early mock drafts and early rankings, I wasn't paying attention to either one of them. But now more so Okamoto than Murakami because of the lineup. Okamoto is starting to intrigue me. We talked about Toronto in an earlier segment. They also added Jesus Sanchez. So when you look at the Blue Jays lineup, everyone can hit. Teams won't be able to pitch around them. So whatever Okamoto can do, he'll have the opportunity to do it. But from Murakami, and the White Sox put in a bidet for him, and we could talk about that in the break if you'd rather, or on social media.
That's classy.
But
nope,
from 200
right
down,
that's how you know if I've made it. That's how you know if I've made it. If you walk into my house and I've got one of those fancy Japanese toilets that opens up and makes music and does the bidet system and the whole thing, there'll be signs if I win the lottery.
My wife wants one. Then it's Jonathan Aranda. Again, I think that the Rays are always good. Sal Stewart, Spencer Steer, Ernie Clement. Ernie Clement at 244 is a nice one. Joe, take us to the break with your thoughts.
Sal Stewart, I want to circle him. I know Tito Francona is very excited about him. And look, I know Suarez came in, so all of a sudden it looks like, oh my God, is there anywhere for Sal Stewart to play? He's getting squeezed. They'll find a spot for Sal Stewart, even if it's DH. I can tell you that right now. We'll be right back.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I don't think he was trying to take a shot at the team at all. It was just a plain and simple and obvious fact.
I think what's difficult, though, is, and I agree with you, right? I guess I agree with LeBron. The assessment of it all, it's why the Lakers organization seems to be comfortable with that truth, unless they disagree. But again, I don't really know how you disagree.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
You guys had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You knew you were facing a Mike McDonald defense that disguises everything, and that was your game plan, to play scared. I mean, Mike Vrabel, I love the guy. He played that game, Donnie, like it was a preseason scrimmage in August and not the Super Bowl.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
It looked like a clump of grass. It didn't look like an eagle. That's the one, by the way, that USA Today claimed was the best ad. They thought the Lay's ad was number 2. The worst ad was any ad that had AI in it or had an AI company behind it. It wasn't because of the AI. It was because they were the most nonsensical ads you've ever seen. Does anybody look at these ads and understand if they are actually trying to do what they're trying to do, which is to showcase the product as opposed to being great with AI? Very embarrassing.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt and Joe with you here, giving you everything you need in order to dominate. We're talking baseball, like Carew and Vida Blue, you know, every so often. It's kind of like Christmas. There are certain times where it's okay to listen to certain songs on repeat over and over. And I think now's the time we can start to listen to those good Center Field by John Fogerty, Talking Baseball, just all these kind of things to get you in the mood. And to help get us in the mood, Joe Pisapia, the author of the Fantasy Black Book, is breaking down now the second base position. We did first base. Go back, check it out. Like, comment, and subscribe if that's a thing. Looking at second base here, Joe, this is the position that I played most of my life. I think you played second as well, and outfield. So I think we can both kind of talk to this position. Jazz Chisholm is number 1. Ketel Marte is number 2. I don't have a problem with this. I think Chisholm brings a bit more of an upside, although I do like Marte. Then we have Bryce Terang and Maikel Garcia. And I was talking to you earlier, and let's stop here to get your thoughts on Bryce Terang being ranked 3rd. He's ahead of players like Nico Horner, Jose Altuve, Jordan Westberg, Ozzie Albies, Luke Keyshaw. Joe, your thoughts?
Look, my thoughts here are Bryce Terang. And for the record, I played catcher and second base too. A disaster in the outfield. Like, they're just trying to get my bat in the lineup more. And I was like, look, I can't do this. I can't play in the outfield. Like, this is not working. I'm an infield kind of guy. But to me, Bryce Terang is an infielder that is a little concerning. And I'll tell you why. Heading into last year, my concern with Bryce Terang is, look, I love the 50 steals, but he doesn't have a lot of power. And now, with the way the rules have changed over the years, it's easier to find stolen bases. So I don't know how special that is. Then he has a year where he has all this power, right? 18 homers nobody's expecting, and the stolen bases drop by half. And he goes from a 50 stolen base guy to a 25 stolen base guy. And it makes you start to wonder, all right, well, who is Bryce Terang? And I think we're still trying to figure it out. And then I went back and I was starting to look in a little, the AA numbers, AAA numbers, and you look at the minor league track record. Over 400 plus minor league games, he has a slugging percentage in the 3s. And that doesn't scream 18 homer guy for me. So I'm concerned there's going to be power regression. And if there's power regression, and all of a sudden on top of that, he's not the same guy stealing 50 bases, I think this is a tenuous ranking. Ketel Marte, I would absolutely rather have than him. Of course, he's going significantly higher in drafts. But there is some weird drop-off. Second base is very tier-based. Like, I would rather have Ketel Marte than Jazz Chisholm. I'll take the batting average over the steals. Again, I think batting average is hard to find nowadays in stolen bases. Yeah. Then the drop-off is significant to Terang, Maikel Garcia, Nico Horner. Second base, I think you have to have a plan for, Matt. I don't know how you feel about the rest of these guys in this first grouping here, but 1 through 6, all the way down to Jose Altuve, I think each one of these guys has some warts. I think there's some guys you can say, I can live with this player. But their overall ADP, if you're looking at it, like Bryce Terang is at 47 and really close to him is Roman Anthony. There's no way I'm not taking Roman Anthony over Bryce Terang.
Yeah, I agree. And you're kind of starting to give me a little bit of anxiety as I see it all played out in front of me, because in most drafts, I've been targeting an ADP of 128. I've been reaching for Ozzy Albies. That's just been where I've landed because I expect there to be a bounce back. So I have not had to endure this particular problem. But if Albies gets poached and I need a second baseman, I mean, after that, it's Jackson Holiday, Ceddanne Rafaela, no interest, Brandon Lau, no interest. But to me, Albies is the guy. And then we get into the 178s, into the 200s. Talk to me a little bit about Ozzy Albies. Am I right to think that there's got to be a bounce back?
Well, look, there's only a couple guys on this list that have elite power and stolen base potential. And Ozzy Albies is one of them. And this is the first year you're getting a massive discount on him. This was a player a couple years ago, coming off multiple 30, 100, 100 seasons with 30 stolen bases that you thought, all right, well, he's probably a early second round pick. But injuries really slowed him. Last year, it was just a disaster for the Braves all the way around. Everybody was hurt. Everybody underperformed for the most part. One of the two or both. And I think Albies is a really interesting dart thrower. I had Chris Towers on my show from CBS earlier this week. And we had a conversation about Albies, and he and I see this the same, which is he's still a player in his prime, entering his prime years. If you have a healthy Acuna, all of a sudden, I think you have Ozzy Albies potentially bouncing back in 2026.
Yeah, no, I agree. And then when you look at the ADPs, now we go from a range of ADP of 178 all the way down to an ADP of 231. There is a significant drop-off. Marcus Semien, Xavier Edwards. There could be some average and stolen bases there. Bryson Stott, Jorge Polanco, Gleyber Torres, if you like what you see. Jose Caballero also will give you speed, and Joe brought up a great point with Terang. You can find speed elsewhere, and Caballero kind of illustrates that at the 225 ADP. Matt McLain is there. And then at 231, I'd like to stop and talk about Luis Garcia, because this is, again, to me, another free square. I don't think anyone is looking at a team like the Washington Nationals for anything real outside of adding to your existing lineup. But if you find yourself stuck at second base, a guy like Luis Garcia or a guy like Luis Ariz, I would not mind putting them there because, remember, I'm a kid from the 80s, and I remember when second base didn't give you a lot, Joe.
Yeah, Ariz is right outside of this grouping here. But, Marcus Semien is an interesting one, too, because he is an older player, and he's coming off some down years. But I saw in the projected Mets lineup right now, he's looking probably to be the fifth guy. I think that's actually a good spot for him to drive in runs, and there's not a lot of pressure on him. So he's an interesting one. I think Jorge Polanco, coming off a solid 20-plus homer season, also another pretty intriguing player, too. Obviously, they like him. They like what he can bring. Rafaela is one, I think, if you look deeper into the stats, you look at the on-base percentage, that is, I think, flirting with really a dangerous fantasy asset there, because I think it's very difficult. Yeah, like, he's a great defensive player. I think we all agree on that. But in terms of an everyday offensive player, I think there's some questions there. So although he gives you 20 steals last year, I don't think that's a very easy one. Bryson Stott, I think, as your middle infield guy is okay. I like what he gives you. To me, I feel much better about Stott as a 32-24 kind of guy than I do about a guy like Ceddanne Rafaela. Why he's going after him, I don't understand personally. Again, sometimes these early ADPs will tell you. You also see in the early ADP a big drop for Jackson Holiday, too. He went from, towards the top five. You see already the ADP is bottomed out. So keep an eye on that. You might get a huge discount on Holiday, and it's a long season. The other guy I want to highlight is actually a Cardinal, believe it or not. JJ Weatherholt, I'm a huge fan of. This guy has great contact. He has pop. He has speed. He is a throwback. He is a Matt Striker baseball kind of guy. Look at these numbers in AA and AAA. 109 games, 23 steals, 17 homers, hitting .306, a .931 OPS. His game, to me, really tracks to early success because he puts the ball in play. I love his approach at the plate. He is a complete player. JJ Weatherholt could be part of that Cardinal turnaround. We'll be right back with more FSD. Don't go anywhere.
Class is in session. Today, let's talk about the teaser. A teaser is a multi-leg bet where you shift the point spread in your favor. You get better numbers, but every selection has to win. It doesn't matter what you bet if you don't have the insights. Tune into SportsGrid and get ahead of the class.
I don't think he was trying to take a shot at the team at all. It was just a plain and simple and obvious fact.
I think what's difficult, though, is, and I agree with you, right? I guess I agree with LeBron. The assessment of it all, it's why the Lakers organization seems to be comfortable with that truth, unless they disagree. But again, I don't really know how you disagree.
Game time decisions. Only on SportsGrid.
You guys had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You knew you were facing a Mike McDonald defense that disguises everything, and that was your game plan, to play scared. I mean, Mike Vrabel, I love the guy. He played that game, Donnie, like it was a preseason scrimmage in August and not the Super Bowl.
The early line. Only on SportsGrid.
It looked like a clump of grass. It didn't look like an eagle. That's the one, by the way, that USA Today claimed was the best ad. They thought the Lay's ad was number 2. The worst ad was any ad that had AI in it or had an AI company behind it. It wasn't because of the AI. It was because they were the most nonsensical ads you've ever seen. Does anybody look at these ads and understand if they are actually trying to do what they're trying to do, which is to showcase the product as opposed to being great with AI? Very embarrassing.
Newswire. Only on SportsGrid.
All right, welcome back into FST Fantasy Sports Today. Matt Striker, Joe Pisapia with you here. We're going to do something fun here on the show, and hopefully we'll be doing a lot more of it. We want to hear from you, though, at SportsGrid, at SportsGrid TV. Let us know your thoughts. It's a by the numbers, but we're going to just kind of take a deep dive into how lineups are really constructed and how baseball is changing. So we're going to go by the numbers for Pete Crow Armstrong. Now, for this upcoming season, Armstrong is slated on Roster Resource to hit 5th. He'll have Nico Horner behind him, which gives him some protection. And it speaks about this new trend of extending lineups that we will talk about. But side by side, we want to look at Pete Crow Armstrong's splits between his first half and his second half, and why is it important? Joe Pisapia, break this down for us.
Well, whenever I'm going into the early ADPs, I'm always looking for guys that I'm also afraid of at their ADP. And Pete Crow Armstrong's going as the 30th player overall. And it concerns me a great deal. And here's why. In his track record in the minor leagues, he was always a player that struggled with left-handed pitching, struggled with consistency. He's a fun player. He took the world by storm last year. He was very exciting, ended up with a 30-30 season. And people just look at the counting stats at the end of the year. But that's not how you should evaluate a player. You've got to go way deeper than that. So if you look at Pete Crow Armstrong, you look at the first half. Sure, first half was dazzling. It was great. It was really fun, right? You saw him at 25 homers and still 27 stolen bases. We talked about him as a value last year, and in season-long roto leagues, you got your value and then some out of him at his ADP. But now you got to pay for him. Once the league kind of picked up on Pete Crow Armstrong, look at the second half for him, and look at how the numbers have changed. Second half, 62 games, just 6 home runs, just 8 stolen bases. But look at that batting average drop to 216. The OBP dropping to an untenable 262. Okay, that is brutal. That is like, you can't play. You're not allowed on the team, bro. 372 slugging percentage. All these things dropped off the map. A 634 OPS is not an everyday player. So the league figured him out and found his weaknesses after a torrid first half. But the one weakness I think that's always underlying with Pete Crow Armstrong, that the most I wanted to see in terms of growth, I didn't see last year. And that's how he hits left-handed pitching. Because at the end of the day, as good of a defender as he is, if you don't hit left-handed pitching, it's really tough for you to be a great everyday player. Look at his splits here against lefties, too, and what he did last year. Because if you look at those splits there for him against left-handed pitching, he hit just a $188 last year, a 217 OBP, a 376 slugging, and a 594 OPS. Now, against right-handed pitching, the OPS was 838. So, okay, he was fine against righties. But you got to be able to hit lefties a little bit if you're going to be a superstar, a top 25, top 30 guy in fantasy. So for me, Matt, that really concerns me. Do these splits and these deeper stats concern you when you start to peel the layers of the onion back a little bit to Pete Crow Armstrong?
Absolutely. And it's such an astute way of looking at things. Just because the machine tells you the ADP of this player is that, do you agree with it? And a lot of times we get caught up in it when we're doing our mock drafts and we move over to the average pick kind of section there. Oh, well, I better pick this guy, otherwise I'm not going to get him. But Joe, what I like to do is I like to see who's around this player. What are my other options if Pete Crow Armstrong is sitting at 30? Give us an idea of different directions we could go if we don't want to go PCA at that point.
Well, there's some strong starting pitching around there, right? You've got Hunter Brown, Christopher Sanchez around there, Chris Sale returning too. He had a Cy Young caliber season before his injury. Zach Neto at shortstop coming off a really solid year too, 26 homers, 26 steals. I think I'd rather have him because of the premium of the position. Jordan Alvarez on a bounce back, a little scary. I get it. But Alvarez at his peak is a far superior offensive player to Pete Crow Armstrong. He doesn't give you the stolen bases. James Wood, Manny Machado, these are like the 10 guys in that range. And I got to tell you, like, I think I'd rather pivot to pitcher or go to one of the other offensive players because to me, I know what I'm getting with Manny Machado. I think people are looking a little too hard at the 30 stolen bases of Pete Crow Armstrong. Not enough about the left-handed pitching work, and certainly not enough about what happened in the second half. And I think that's really important when you're trying to evaluate the overall value of some of these players like we did with Terang. 47 overall, he's going in the same spot as Roman Anthony. There's no way I'm not taking Roman Anthony over Bryce Terang. Matt, this is the first baseball show in the books. I know the juices are flowing.
Hey,
how do you feel, baby? How do you feel? You got to feel.
Listen, let me tell you something. Nothing can possibly go wrong. Everything is a part of the show. And I think the beauty of it all is when you prepare and you start to get these thoughts in your mind, you watch shows like this on this network, you start to have a better understanding. Once the real draft comes, I promise you it's going to be like this. Joe, what do you got?
I got next week, we're going to come back and continue our drive through the outfield there, third base, shortstop, do those position previews. And we're starting to break down some more players for you, too, because it's important to target players, also which ones to avoid. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. From Matt, I'm Joey P. See you next time, kids.
You guys had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. You knew you were facing a Mike Macdonald defense that disguises everything, and that was your game plan, to play scared. I mean, Mike Vrabel, I love the guy. He played that game, Donnie, like it was a preseason scrimmage in August and not the Super Bowl.
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Super Bowl Sunday, about $870 million was traded. Again, I caution you, that is not the same as sports betting handle for a variety of reasons, but we also saw Nevada sportsbooks, which includes Las Vegas, only took about $133 million in handle. That was its worst performance in the decade in terms of total handle on the game. Now, we don't have ratings. We don't have a lot of other things. There's a lot of reasons for that.
Newswire, only on SportsGrid.
The Patriots postseason to the worst regular season of the last umpteen years. Fair enough?
Fair.
All right. So the Patriots postseason, they averaged 1.13 points per drive, okay? The winless Cleveland Browns about 10 years ago averaged 1.22.
The Craig Carton Show, only on SportsGrid.
So you know Gary Bettman wants the USA to win because he knows the bump that they can get out of this. Canada wins, and it's like, yeah, whatever, right? And the level of pressure on Canada in this is next level. It's like it's equivalent to like Argentina in soccer or something, Brazil. It's one of those like, yeah, if you lose, don't bother coming home.
Winter Game Central, only on SportsGrid.